When looking between the Canon EF50mm f1.8 STM and the Canon RF50mm f1.8 STM, it's less about what's changed and more about what's stayed the same. Okay, so in this clip we're going to be comparing the Canon EF50mm f1.8 STM, the nifty 50, versus the RF50mm f1.8 STM. Now of course the RF50mm 1.8 is built specifically for the Canon R series of mirrorless cameras. So the EOS R, the RP, the R5, the R6, the RA, and soon to be coming R3, and then sometime in the future the R1. Woo! Whereas the Canon EF50mm 1.8 is for the Canon EF mount. Now on that point you can adapt the EF50mm 1.8 onto the R series of cameras using the EFS or EF to RF mount adapter. It's really simple and the results come out exactly the same as if you were using it on a native EF or EFS mount. Okay, well with that being said, let's look at the focal length. They're both 50mm, they both have exactly the same focal length. The only difference you are going to notice in the field is that the RF variant does have a closer focusing distance at 30 centimeters from the sensor, whereas with the EF variant it's 35 centimeters from the sensor. So you are going to be able to get a little bit closer to get a tighter frame with the RF version. They both have the maximum aperture of f1.8. And hey, to be honest, that's why we love the 50mm so much, because we don't have to shell over a heap of cash and we can still get access to pretty fast glass. You know, f1.8 is fantastic for achieving the out of focus backgrounds for low light performance. In terms of the size, they're very, very similar indeed, although I did notice the RF version was slightly bulkier, ever so slightly, not by much, maybe a millimeter or two in it. They're both made out of engineering plastic on a metal mount, which is terrific. They both have a single focusing ring. One thing to be said though, the RF version, the focus ring can be switched to a control ring, allowing you to access other settings within your camera, such as ISO or the exposure compensation. That's up to you, you can adjust the settings whatever suits you. Whereas the EF version, of course, the ring is solely for focus, autofocus to manual focus selectable. Jumping back to the control ring on the RF variant, very briefly though, it's clickless, it's got no clicks. Whereas on my 35mm, the control ring clicks. So if you want to use this for video, by all means, if you've got the in-body stabilization in the R5 or the R6. And it also works really well with digital image stabilization as well. But because it doesn't have any clicks, you can set it to exposure compensation or ISO and adjust your video image on the hop. In terms of weights, they're pretty similar. There's not much difference in weight, you're not going to notice the weight. The only time you will notice the weight is when you have to adapt the EF variant over to the R mount, whereas you'd attach this additional adapter and it would give it a bit more heft, but not much. It's a really lightweight, compact, portable, transportable lens, and that's part of what makes it so cool. Okay, well jumping to the price, the EF variant, you could pick that up for less than $100 US, quite easily, brand new, whereas the RF version's got to run you to about 200. Here in New Zealand, it's basically 200 for a brand new EF variant, whereas the RF version is probably going to cost you about 400 or 420. Now we did mention uses for these lenses, and the Canon EF50mm will work on any Canon camera DSLR with the EF mount. And it'll also work on your crop sensor cameras as well, although you will get a slightly tighter frame. It's going to be closer to 80mm than the true 50mm. The RF50mm f1.8 can only be used on Canon's mirrorless cameras, the EOS R, the RP, the R5, the R6, the RA, and as we mentioned, the soon to be coming R3 and R1. One thing to remember before you leap off and buy the RF version is to remember that you can take the EF version and adapt it to the R mount by placing it on the adapter. And in doing so, not only do you pay half the price, but you also get more versatility if you're then going to be able to use it back on your Canon DSLR cameras, and also adapt it to other cameras like the EOS M50. Okay, well what we established from that roundup was that not much has changed. They're both 50mm f1.8 lenses and a compact, transportable, lightweight body. Let's have a look now at some of the photos, and for these I've taken the first couple of shots at the closest focusing distance for both these lenses. And I think you'll agree, looking at these, there is really no discernible difference in the image quality or what we're managing to achieve, like focus or out of focus backgrounds. And for these photos here, I've jumped back a bit and taken a bit of a wider shot, and once again, as you can see, there's very, very little difference in these images. I mean, for a low priced, easily accessible lens, both of these capture excellent images with great image quality, as you can well see here. And the fact that Canon themselves say that the RF version does not have any advance optically over the EF version, you are going to get what you've come to expect. Now the RF version might be your first 50mm, in which case you're going to be staggered by the photos you're going to be able to create. And for the EF variant of the lens, well, it's not going to be native to the R series cameras, but it's still going to adapt on there really, really well. And the package you're left with afterwards is certainly not intimidating or obtuse. You can use this quite discreetly in any circumstances where you'll be using the RF version. The only thing is, it's just not natively built for the R. And furthermore, you don't get the control ring, which you can access those extra features. Okay, before I go, I just want to assure you that both of these lenses perform exactly the same on the R series cameras, whether it's the EF version adapted or whether it's the RF native version. The focusing is just as fast on both of them, which is acceptably fast. And not only that, the images are both great. Nothing about adapting the EF lens to the R series cameras makes it any less competent than the RF version. That's all food for thought, and I hope this comparison was of help to you. Thanks a lot for watching. Leave me any comments down below, and we'll catch you next time. Have a good one. Bye.